Hi friends, I'm the Reverend Lisa Work, and you're listening to Good News on the Ground, where we share stories from real people about how they live out the good news of Jesus Christ, not just with words, but through everyday life. My co-host, Reverend Bradley Matson, is on vacation right now, so you're just here with me today. Before we dive in, just a quick note, we had a few technical issues while recording this episode, so if you're watching the video version, you might notice a black bar between Sarah and me on the screen. It's not quite the visual we had hoped for, but the conversation was too good not to share, so we pressed on. Thanks for your grace as we work through the quirks of real life storytelling and evangelism. This month's episode is all about bees. Yes, bees. And my guest, Sarah Reid, is a passionate beekeeper and a faithful steward of God's creation. In our conversation, we're going to talk about how even the smallest creatures can teach us big truths about community, care, and the good news of Jesus. From the buzzing hives to the blooming gardens, Sarah will share with us how creation care, deep-rooted community, and rhythms of beekeeping can all become acts of evangelism. Together, we'll talk about why we do what we do and how we practice evangelism in everyday life, the obstacles we face, and what we learn when things don't go as planned. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi, thank you, Lisa. I'm so excited to be here and talking about bees with you.
I'm very excited too. Sarah and I have talked about bees. I have yet to get out there and visit those bees, but it is on my list. It is on my list. Sarah, tell me, how did you get into beekeeping?
Well, that's a really great story. Thanks for asking, Lisa. About 15 or 20 years ago, a friend of mine was starting a new farm venture and was just like, you know what, let's really go for this and let's get some bees and let's do this thing. And so that's kind of how she kind of brought me in on board with that. And it just sort of expanded from there. She had a passion for it. And it was just so electrifying that it spread to me. And hopefully I'm helping to share the good news that way. We're spreading bees around.
That's fun. So she was actually the one excited, and you're just like, okay, I'm here for the game. I'm
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah. And, the first couple of times, it can be a little bit intimidating when there's a million bees around you, but we use a lot of precaution and suit up. So it doesn't bother me too much anymore.
But that was my next question. Have you been stung?
Yes, unfortunately. It comes along with the job, but I do prepare really thoroughly. I have a great suit, and all of our volunteers that help us with our apiary project, we make sure that they have proper equipment, proper gloves, suit, jackets. And a fun fact about me is I'm actually deadly allergic. So getting stung is a big deal.
So you also have your EpiPen nearby?
I sure do. I always have it within reach every day, all the time.
Oh,
crazy.
That's fascinating. Sarah and I have talked about this before, but I finished the book recently, The Music of Bees. And do you like that book? I never asked you.
I did like that book. I did read it.
And they talk about it early in the book, how you have to sort of get used to it and getting stung. And but I've never heard of a beekeeper who's deathly allergic. You are the first person I've learned that from.
Oh, yeah. There's always got to be some of us out there. So be careful. They can get you.
Duly noted. So tell us a little bit, before we get into some of our other questions, tell us about the apiary and the West Branch Apiary.
Sure, I'd be glad to. So the West Branch Apiary is a ministry that we started up here. We started in Williamsport at Trinity. And the cool thing about how we got started was we sort of had this vision years ago, like we want to do this. We want some beekeeping. We want to bring it to Williamsport. And, an obstacle that we kind of came into at that time, 10 or 15 years ago, was nobody was interested in it. We weren't quite there yet with creation care, with maybe as just a parish, what have you. And people were like, no way, you're going to get stung. It's dangerous. And so we kind of put it away and we kept the bees on the farm. And then, a couple of years ago, as the church started to turn and people started to see creation care as part of justice and evangelism tools, they kind of turned back to us and said, hey, that might be kind of cool. So
the bees, right?
Yeah, you guys like the bees. So we were able to get started by putting some hives up on the roof of the church. So they were out of sight. Yeah, we started up on the roof of Trinity, and there's a little tiny flat spot that you could fall down. So don't tell church insurance. It's actually not up there anymore, but we started up there. But then we were able to get a Shape by Faith grant a few years later, and we partnered with Trinity Jersey Shore, with Church of the Good Shepherd, with the Red Shield Garden, which is an outreach ministry of the Salvation Army. And we put different kinds of bees in different locations. And so we also have another place too. So we have about 5 locations where we have 5 different sets of bees, and we just have a great time, sharing and taking care of it, and sharing our faith together. So that's just like a quick overview.
It's so cool. I think what is interesting to me is I suspect, now you could tell me if I'm wrong, I'm just guessing here, but that allows conversations to emerge that might not emerge with people about why do you do this? And because why do you do bees and curiosity? Is that accurate?
It sure is, Lisa. A lot of people didn't realize in our community that the Episcopal Church really does have a platform for evangelism and for creation care and for social justice. All 3 of those things that, they're intersectional. And when they see us living out that faith, people are interested. I am always impressed by the amount of people who have heard about what we're doing, even just a little snippet. They're like, oh, that's the church that has the bees, isn't it? I'm like, yeah. And why? Because we understand that God's love is greater than just for one person or one church. It's for all of us, and it's for all creatures and all aspects of the world. And we really want people to know that about why we're doing it. And it's a good fellowship. It's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. I'm growing some corn, things that require pollination, like tomatoes and squash. They won't grow if the bees don't do their work. Isn't that correct? Like they do evangelism, getting the pollen.
They do. That is something that I think people are starting to recognize too, which is exciting. You are participating in flower growth, tree growth, and food production. We're starting to recognize that without bees, we would lose, like 2/3 of our food products.
Wow.
They are key in so many things that we like to eat, like corn, alfalfa, staples for animal food, all kinds of fruit, vegetables, as you already mentioned, in your own garden, and almonds. Where would we be without our almonds and our chocolate?
Exactly.
All kinds of things like that. So even just having 1 hive, 2 hives, or what I also am a big advocate of are mason bees. We could make a whole other movie about that. Those little guys are really the heavy lifters in food production. So we all know how much food we need and how the world benefits from that. So there's so many great aspects of beekeeping.
Well, that's kind of cool. Have you ever had somebody who's curious? They see you in your bee suit, maybe, and then they start asking you some questions, and so you start having a conversation, and it's opened the door to share something deeper. Has it ever opened that up?
It has. The first door is kind of a joke and silly that opens is when someone sees me in my bee suit, they always ask me if I'm ready to blast off to outer space. They always think they're the first person who thought of that.
Never thought of that before.
Yeah, I've never heard that one. But on the more serious side, I get to tell people about organization and about, how God has created all of these like intricacies, and every bee has their role and of what they're working on, what they're designed to do. And they're kind of a lot like us, We all work in different capacities, different areas. We have different spiritual gifts, and yet we all come together for the same purpose. And for us as Christian beekeepers, Episcopal beekeepers, our goal is to share God's love with others. And that is easy for me to talk about because a lot of the barriers that we might have about talking about our relationship with God or evangelism, we're afraid of those rejection or anything like that. But when you have something that you actually care about, that you feel passionate about, and you can see God in that story, it makes it so much easier. So I'm a big advocate of everyday evangelism. That's partly why I do this.
I think I've heard about a podcast that talks about that.
You may have.
So what are the biggest challenges? I've read a couple of books, The Secret Life of Bees and The Music of Bees. Those are I'm an expert now. I'm just kidding. We've heard on the news recently things about bees dying. So what are some of the obstacles or challenges you've had as a beekeeper?
Yeah, I think on a day-to-day work level, we are faced with some challenges, as you had mentioned. There are some diseases, some pests and parasites, and also some things that we are not sure how to control and dictate what are our best practices for beekeeping as climate change and different sprays. So those are always obstacles, and sometimes they can feel really heavy and really trodden when you hear these news stories, when we first started, we met other obstacles, probably from, people who were a little wary, church-wide about, oh,
Yeah.
that's the danger. Those people have changed, and they are some of the biggest advocates that we have. And so I love to see
Interesting.
that too. They have turned away from that negativity. And I like to think they turned to Jesus, but I'm not sure. But they are spreading the good news too. And they're like, oh, yeah, my church has the bees. What does your church have?
Same.
It's kind of like a stumper for them. So I think
Yeah.
obstacles, those physical obstacles are definitely there. And then, for more spiritual obstacles, it can be discouraging when they fail. You feel it personally, you can feel it very deeply. But overall, I think I feel encouraged a lot by other volunteers and by our community that are serving with us and working with us, and by those people who were a bit of the curmudgeons at first, naysayers, and now they are on board and they are evangelizing others by talking about the church in that. Using that lens. And they're too finding it not so intimidating to talk about
I
their
love
church
that.
and to start even just a little bit of diving into what does their faith mean to them and being able to talk to their friends or people on the street. So I think the reach of the apiary is so exciting. It's a lot more than just me and my 20 friends or something that that are out there doing the heavy lifting.
Have you ever lost an entire hive?
Yes, unfortunately, we have. And sometimes a lot of it can be just they're not well prepared for the winter. And we do our best to help them to get ready and get prepared, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. So and unfortunately, like the average, like national averages, most big beekeeping establishments are losing 50% easy.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Wow.
we going into last winter, we lost one, so we only lost and out of 10,
Out of
10 or 12.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah,
10%. So
Yeah, we
not
only
bad.
lost 10%.
But it's interesting because, again, when I read The Music of Bees, one of the things that I guess I knew about sprays and pesticide sprays, and it's kind of a complicated thing, and it can cause bees to die almost instantly, especially like near orchards. And I had no idea that it was such an instantaneous thing.
Yeah, unfortunately, what we put into the environment it's maybe helping one thing, but it's really doing harm in other ways. We do need to investigate what are our best practices on who do we trust, so to speak, on some of these issues and think more deeply about it because it's true. Your spray in your yard is definitely going to affect my yard and my bees or what other aspects. And I hope people are starting to think about that a little bit more as we travel forward and we're starting to understand that we need bees, without them.
Well, true. How about swarms? Like I've seen a swarm before, and it's kind of scary. But as I have talked with some friends who do beekeeping, it's they're actually looking for a home, right? Or they're looking for their queen, hopefully, or looking for a home.
Yeah. So generally the swarms are pretty tame. They've eaten a bunch of honey and they're, as you said, they're going with their queen to try to find a new home, whether there's different reasons why that could happen. They got overcrowded. They just felt like it. It's part of beekeeping for there to be a swarm. And we've been fortunate that we've captured a couple around our church. We caught one last summer at Trinity, and it may have been one of our own hives that swarmed. I'm not sure. But yeah, we were able to rescue that one and we installed it in a new hive in our community garden out back, which is really exciting. So we got to partner with them too. We have a little garden. And that's probably one of our best hives going into this summer. That was a swarm that we captured.
It kind of, when I think about this, and again, I could be way off, but I think about the passage where it says, the workers are few and the harvest is ripe. And I kind of see like swarms as they need somebody to help gently guide them, to give them a home.
That's a really great analogy, Lisa. I had never thought of that myself. That's really exciting to think about it that way. Yeah.
Because I imagine they're a little anxious because they're looking for home.
They're looking for home, aren't we all?
True, we're all longing for home. And then I kind of see the gentle beekeeper, like the gentle shepherd, helping them get to a safe home.
Yeah, that's really
Oh,
beautiful, and that is exactly what we try to do. We try to find the queen if we can. And oftentimes, when the bees are in a big group like that, maybe the queen is in the center because they're all longing for that
protecting
home
her.
and that sense of home and that
Mhm.
protection. And so, we try to carefully lop off a limb or something and get it into a box. And, once you have captured the queen into the box, it's very exciting and amazing to see the way that the bees, they know that they can sense it, and there's, pheromones and whatnot. And
Right.
they just line right up, and they just march right into the box. And then you can
Fascinating.
them from that location and get them into the new box, new home. It's
I love
really
that.
amazing. I think, if
Love
you
that.
check out our Facebook page, we probably have some footage of that from last year where we
We are
captured a
going to
couple
link.
swarms.
I hope that if you're listening to this as a podcast or you're watching us, all of these links to the West Branch Apiary will be there. And you should join the Facebook group. And there'll be a video too that I believe the diocese did recently that you
Yeah.
need to check out. It's kind of cool, some live on the ground footage of beekeeping happening. I have to say, I know you don't live that far. Like the bees are not that far from where I live now. And so I really need to come down because I would love to scrape the honey. I would love to be part of that. I'm fascinated by it.
Yeah, you are welcome as is everyone. We've got Episcopal beekeepers, have some from outside the sphere of the church, and we're sharing our good news with them just bit by bit. And we are an organization that are open to everyone. So you don't have to have any experience. You'll get my contact information. You can just let me know, and we'll hook you up, and you can join us anytime. And you
Fantastic.
can, yeah, we have people who are afraid of bees that think they're really terrifying, what have you. So they don't do that stuff, but they help harvest the honey. They help do the bottling, or they help repair equipment. We always have big work days that they're really a lot of fun. We get together and we fix all their
Cool.
equipment, have a picnic, and that sort of thing. And it's just a great time, to get to know your neighbors. And I think
Absolutely.
um, I've gotten such a new appreciation too of the love and commitment that some of our other church friends have for their church community and what's going on over there, that I wouldn't have had that opportunity had we not been fortunate enough to partner with some of our other churches on this
Ah,
project. I've gotten a number of friends is just expanding, and I love
it's
that.
like a synergy, isn't it? And just I love that. I love that. So I have a few closing questions for you. It's like the 20 questions. What have these taught you about maybe failure or patience or letting go of control?
Yeah, I think you really hit something with all three of those statements, Lisa. It's amazing that there are a lot of things beyond our control, that we can partner with God and with each other, and we can kind of help steer and guide, but ultimately we have to leave it up to the spirit to do like the heavy lifting. We're kind of co-creators. When I look into my hives and I see all these bees, and like I said, they're all organized, they all know their role, they all know their function. And I think that is just how we are in our life in Christ, is that we all have different gifts, different spiritual identities, and different aspects of ourselves, that when we apply them, the amount of good that we can do, and the amount of
Mm.
love that we can share, and kindness and openness and authenticity. I see all of that when I look inside the hive. And I also love that I'm not out there doing all this work by myself. Like I said, we have a community of people that are supporting us. They're like, sharing, following, but they're also coming out and they're helping do the work. So it's a real community effort. And I love that about it.
As you were talking and you said about people are afraid, like, "Well, I won't do the bees, but I'll do this because I'm afraid of the bees." I think a lot of people think bees and wasps are the same. And they're not. And wasps can be dangerous and they're kind of mean and they're aggressive, and bees aren't.
That is so true. Honeybees are generally, they're not aggressive. The times where they do kind of get a little bit stirred up is when you're really bothering their environment. And you're not going to be doing that in your daily life typically.
Right.
You see a honeybee, please don't step on it. Don't spot it. They're not wasps. So if you're not sure the difference, maybe you can probably Google that. But even the same with wasps, like the deeper I think about creation and, our role in God's world, the more I don't want to kill all the wasps.
I don't necessarily want them on my doorway.
Truthfully, when they're in the house, whatever, they've got to go. Out if they're over there, they can stay.
Absolutely. I mean, cool if
Uh,
they're up in a tree somewhere.
yeah, yeah, and they do pollinating work as well, but it is true they are significantly more aggressive, and they can bite or sting you multiple times. When honeybees, sting you, that's it. They will
They're
expire.
gonna
They're
die
going
very
to die.
quickly.
So I think, that's part of God's plan. They don't want to get you.
Yeah,
And
it's a last resort when they sting you.
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So how has this worked? And it's sort of you sort of answered this already, but how has it shaped your relationship with God?
Yeah, but I just feel that the more I do this type of work and being more open about sharing my faith and sharing what I love doing, the more complexity I see in God's world and the more interested that I am, the more I want to connect with that. And it just opens up a wider doorway of sharing love and compassion and community and also unity. I really think more deeply about how are we connected to the earth and how is that more connected deeply to God. In my formation and a different tradition, it was very separated. And
Yes, mine as
um,
well.
and I don't see that anymore. And I want people to understand that, to have that same experience and that same
Mm.
wonder that, these things are not in separate silos or what have you. These are all connected and they're all part of that cosmic story. Boy,
Some
I
of the
think it's very,
mystery, right? The
yeah, the
mystery of
mystery of it
God.
all, definitely. And
Yeah.
I see that when I look more deeply into creation and I see, those intricacies and those small details that in the past I would have just, there's a leaf or look at that, but I think more
Right.
deeply that was some of that story, and God's love for us to make this system so complex and so wonderful. How can you not want to tell people about that?
So, and when you were talking, I'm reminded my one daughter loves bees and loves creation and she a number of years ago encouraged us not to like clean up our garden in the fall and to let it just instead of making it look nice and tidy. And she explained to us about how the bees hibernate, and so just let it lie. But I think we are so quick to want to make everything tidy and neat, and in doing that we're actually missing out on mystery and new growth.
Absolutely. And I think that is maybe part of our story as humans, maybe even our selfish inclination that we can control this. We'll make it look the way we want. We want it pretty. And that's definitely a growing edge for me. I'm a big gardener as well. And, oh, the tomatoes are done. I got to get this out of
I
here.
know,
I got
right?
to rake it all over and put the shame on me, put the plastic down or something. Definitely not all do as I say, do whatever.
All a work in progress. We're all a
Yes,
work in
but I
progress.
think that you make an excellent point that that is an area where we could all probably do a little bit better when it comes to taking a deep breath and just letting that go. That feeling of needing this to look pristine or learning a new way of thinking that it's fine the way that it is. It's
Yeah, and
better.
let me F2. I just recently read his book,
Yeah.
A Good Soil. Have you read that book yet?
I have. That's a really nice one.
Love that book. And he
Mm.
talks about, and I actually had a chance to hear him a few weeks ago. And he talks early in the book about being challenged by Nate, the professor who ran the farminary, to just let it be what it is and not what it can do for him. And I
So
thought,
true.
and I've been sitting with that for a long time. How do I it sounds like for that's the same thing. I want to make the garden, especially at the end of the season, look good for me. What can it do for Lisa?
Yeah.
As opposed to what just letting it be what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, the wider benefits that yeah, that sphere of things outside of ourselves that are benefiting from it. We're so focused sometimes on, as you said, on what can I get from this or what can I do? Yeah, that's a really good lesson and a good takeaway point is just to take a breath and think about it as something larger than yourself.
Little less judgment, right?
Mm.
For someone listening and they're like, I am so curious about bees and maybe I'd like to become a beekeeper. What would you tell them?
Well, I would tell them to, grab a book on the internet and just do a little research first because, you are going to have some expenditure for all that equipment and stuff like that. But I would definitely encourage you to think about it deeply and think is this something that I really want to explore? And if you still are feeling that way after you've looked at the books, you know, get in contact with your local like ag service, whether it's the 4-H extension, they can really point you in the right direction, or local beekeeping clubs, or if you're kind of nearby me, you can give me a call and I can help you with that too. But I think there are lots of great resources available. There's tons of YouTube, all of that, but you don't have to do it by yourself. And that is something that I really want
Community
to
is what you're
stress. This
saying.
is a community thing, and there are so many other people that have passion about this and they have experience. And as you get into beekeeping, you will find that there's an old adage that if you have one thing that you need to get done and you ask 10 different beekeepers, you'll get 30 answers.
Well, kind of like
Really,
Episcopalians and
yeah,
opinions. I get it.
yes, yeah. So I would definitely encourage you to do some research and find a living, breathing group of people who are already involved, and they will steer you in the right direction. They'll also probably share equipment with you, things like that. But I'm always available if you're within whatever range of Pennsylvania. I can definitely
And
give you a
maybe
call.
come visit the West Branch Apiary.
Absolutely,
And
please come and visit us.
yeah, we would
Yeah.
love that. We would love that. Well, Sarah, thank you so much. This was a great conversation. I learned more about bees. What is it that you want people to remember about the good news on the ground and bees?
I would like people to remember that evangelism is not scary, that it's not hard. All you really need is one or two things that you really have a passion for and that you love, and that you can tell your neighbor, your friend, even the people in the grocery, even just for a minute. When you meet them with kindness and you meet them with love and you show them an authentic thing that you care about, and you can tell them how God has helped you to grow or encourage you to go deeper in your faith through that one thing, whether it's knitting or race cars, a thing that you really love, and how does that inform your story of God and how God informs your own story? And for me, it's beekeeping and creation care and small gardening, farming. I love those things and I really advocate for them. But what I really want to advocate is for God's love for all of those things, that it's much bigger than just my story or what we're trying to do. God and the Spirit are already working on all of those things. And I'm just kind of helping out a little bit. So that's
Oh,
what
and
I'd
I
like
think
people to take away.
I love that. I hear you saying that God knit us together, and God knows the things that gets us that get us excited and
Mm,
passionate, and those are not things that are bad. They're actually things that we should be leaning into because it points those passions point to God.
absolutely. We already know that God is love and the picture of pure love. So if we can just harness just a little bit of that, then love drives away all the fear and that's the stuff that when we think about evangelism in the past, that it
Oh
just doesn't
yeah,
really fit where we are today. And we really need to focus on that, on the
yeah,
love aspect. And why not focus on what you love doing and what inspires you and seeing how God is already working in that thing.
right.
Absolutely. If it's knitting, if it's race cars, whatever.
Or baking or hiking
Sure.
or any number of things. It's actually about all of us leaning into who we've been created to be.
Exactly. You living your authentic life is telling God's story. You don't have
Yes.
to be afraid of that. Whatever that thing is, or those things that make you you, share those with people because you are telling God's story when you do that.
Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Good News on the Ground. And a big thank you to Sarah Reid for sharing her story and reminding us that when we follow our passions, we can share the good news of Jesus in powerful and everyday ways. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. We'll be back next month with another story. Until then, I'm the Reverend Lisa Work. Don't forget, the good news is all around us. Go forth and be good news on the ground in your works, your work, and your witness.